So here we have a graph. We want to sketch the image after reflection in the y-axis. So a reflection in the y-axis means that we're flipping over the y-axis. What value is changing if you do that? Your x values or your y values? Not both of them. You're flipping over the y-axis, your x values are changing. So whenever I see this, I like to try to think of all the different ways this could be asked. So a reflection in the y-axis, I make a little note. I think about a single point going over the y-axis, and if I flip straight over the y-axis, the y value doesn't change, but the x value does. So that tells me it's this kind of reflection. Doing the reflection is not hard, right? What's going to happen to this point? It's 3 away from the y-axis, so it goes 3 away on the other side. This second point is 1 away from the y-axis, so it's 1 away on the other side. And we can do that with the other points as well. This one is 3 away. And then connect the dots. So there we have a reflection. One of the things they want you to start to notice is what happens to the domain in range. Because you might eventually be asked directly to go from domain of one to domain of another one without the graph. Since we have the graph, if you're asked domain and range, you would go by the graph. What's our smallest x value? On the red graph is -3. Biggest x value is 5. Smallest y value, -2. Biggest y value, 2. So one of the things that once I write this, y equals f of -x, writing that tells me only my x values are changed. Sure, we can go from the graph again and say, I'm going to start with the range because it hasn't changed. Even though we flipped it over the x-axis, you can see that the range hasn't changed. And that makes sense because the negative is only inside the brackets. It's only affecting the x. But sure enough, our domain has changed. Now our domain is from -5 to 3. So you can see that from the graph, and that's a great way to get the range. But you can also see it directly in here, because the only thing that's happened is your x values have been multiplied by -1. And so instead of +3, you have -3. And instead of +5, you have -5. And things have been flipped around. Okay, questions for practice on this one? R3 and 13.